Hi, this is your host, Jeff Rogovin, and you're listening to Marketing Mix, where we hear from some of the most influential CMOs of today to discuss the strategies of tomorrow. Welcome to Marketing Mix. We have an awesome show today. We've got Jennifer Kavanagh. Jennifer is the SVP of Marketing and Media for the Philadelphia Eagles and also an old friend of mine. So I'm really excited to have you on the show today, Jen.
Hi, I'm so glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
You know, Jen, I've known you for pretty much the last decade. And when we first met, you were literally launching Bad Girls Club. You used to say pop off.
Absolutely. How could I forget?
Right. How could anybody forget, right? That was huge. So your career has really focused really heavy on in the television world. So executing and building really great strategies and marketing models and all these things for very interesting companies. You're now at the Eagles and you're running marketing, for a massive franchise.
Yep.
So what are you looking to accomplish going into 2019 and this brand new world of sports?
Yeah, it's so interesting. I will say, since you brought up Bad Girls Club, it kind of makes me want to reflect for a quick second on the journey, which, as you pointed out, started with and focused on for a long period of time television as well as digital media designed to kind of super serve and entertain young audiences for a period of time. And then as time went on and I began advising for more networks with different audiences, that included not just young females, but audiences of all shapes and sizes on all platforms. And I used to think about the content landscape very much in buckets, as probably most everyone does, which would be, sort of pop culture or television, if you will, and then sports and then news. And what I learned, having kind of crossed the transom into sports, which was, totally unexpected and really exciting, was that there are so many similarities that I had never considered that were really refreshing. And so, in kind of making the jump and thinking, what do I have to contribute to a really amazing sports franchise with a background like mine, that became sort of clear and evident much sooner than I had expected. And something, that was also very interesting to me in the transition was the fact that that the Eagles themselves were very kind of intentionally focusing their search for a new head of marketing and media, not just within sports, but in a much broader sense, because they had that kind of deep appreciation for the fact that, what moves not just sports brands and franchises and not just content and consumer brands, but kind of everything and anything you're looking for people to connect with is content and storytelling. In a kind of long roundabout way of answering your question, I would say that's very much has been and continues to be, at the center of what we're looking to do here. We're a team that kind of looks at fandom maybe slightly differently. We see fandom as having no boundaries, and therefore our opportunity to kind of serve Eagles fans everywhere they are, not just in the greater Philadelphia area and across the country, but all over the world, is a huge opportunity. And, storytelling and the ability to distribute in so many places far and wide is really where we're focused.
So one quick question for you.
Mm-hmm.
Are you having fun?
It is so much fun. I will
I was really thinking, you must have such a fun job now.
It is so fun, and I'll tell you a little bit about what it's like because it's so completely different from being in media. Like if you were going to ask me, and this is what everyone asks me, what surprised you the most, or what are the biggest differences? We all kind of show up at the NovaCare complex every morning. And by we, I mean, the players, the coaching staff, the front office, the production teams, the strength coaches. I mean, everyone is kind of intermingling in this single place. So you have the ability to kind of see each other and be so connected. And I don't know if my expectation was originally that it would be more siloed than it is, but it was the complete opposite, which is so much fun. We spend a lot of time with the players, shooting content with them and interviewing them for a number of things, but you really get to know kind of everyone's personality in a way that's really fun. And then obviously different from TV, for several weeks out of the year, more than 16 if you're lucky, half the time you're in your home stadium surrounded by, in our case, 70,000 people who love you and love your brand and are there to celebrate you, as well as kind of ride the the peaks and valleys with you. And it's unbelievable. It's incredibly personal. And on the TV side, social was one way to do that, but it's very, very different in person. It's very, very personal, and I would have to say, so much fun.
I'm curious, from you, what is the culture like internally, and how does that impact how you market?
That's a really good question. I would describe our culture, and this may seem a little cliche, but it's very, very team oriented. So I think a lot of the spirit of what moves a successful football team on the field and what's required from each individual player in order for the collective to win at the end of the day is something that is fully and completely adopted throughout the organization. This is, a culture that very much puts the fan first. We spend a lot of time putting ourselves in the shoes of the fan, and being self-critical and asking, are we doing the best thing we could possibly do to make their experience a good experience, whether that's in stadium or via Instagram. It's really something we analyze and labor over. But I would say that kind of aspect of teamwork is something that's pervasive throughout the organization and something that we take very seriously. We win together, we lose together.
I love it. So I read an article recently because I was looking at some of the stuff that you published in the past, and
Mm-hmm.
you had published an article a couple of years ago. I think it was two
Mm-hmm.
or 3 years ago, predicting the development of Facebook Watch,
Yep.
which, it's pretty cool to think about back in the day with all of your TV experience. Here comes Facebook launching, shows and kind of getting into TV and all of that stuff. Is there anything that you could think about today from a prediction perspective as far as content consumption?
Yeah, it's interesting. As you said, that article is a couple of years old, but thinking back to it, it's aged fairly well, like at least in the sense that Facebook's continuing to invest there. How that works out long term still
Yeah.
kind of remains to be seen. But I think what has kind of emerged since then in a bigger way certainly is audio entertainment. So podcasts, well known form of entertainment. I expect that uh, medium will grow. And I think that as it grows, it gives rise to, the idea of, I don't know, like earfluence, right? Where we not only see more and more people spending more time maybe listening instead of watching, either because it's convenient or because the medium, for whatever reason, tends to resonate. I mean, there's some sort of tipping point that will have to take place there. But when it does take place, you'll begin to see, I think, storytelling and the quality of audio as a storytelling medium really take off. I mean, we've all been captivated by original series like Serial and some others, but I think there'll be more and more of that, over time, and it'll be interesting because it challenges to some degree, not it challenges to some degree the premium that we've put on video, and that's not to suggest video doesn't continue to be important, but I think in terms of the attention economy overall, I can see more and more time spent with audio storytelling.
I really like the term earfluence.
Yeah, thanks. I made it up like a year ago, and then I Googled to see if anyone else had used it, and someone did, but in a different context. So I don't know. Maybe I invented it. I have no
I think
idea.
I got to tell you, I was like, I have not heard that term before, and I really like it.
I need to get on trademarking that immediately.
I think you should launch something on LinkedIn today about earfluence.
I will. I will. Thank you.
Jennifer Kavanagh, trends for the future. Right?
Absolutely.
Hey, look,
Absolutely.
a couple years ago, you've already done it once. Do it again.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Thanks for the reminder. Putting it on my to-do list pre-London.
Totally. So the attention economy is something that you study a lot.
Yep.
What do you think are the most effective strategies to tap into audiences today, considering that there's such a surplus amount of content out there and consumers are exposed to so many messages? This is something that I know you're deeply focused on. I think this is something that I'd love to hear from you.
Sure. I mean, I think overall, building strategies inside of an attention economy, it means first that you have to recognize that you're no longer just competing on your primary medium or in your primary category, meaning sports and television don't just compete against sports and television. We're competing against any and every activity or interest that is, appealing to our fan base or that they spend time doing. So what that means is, we have to think really hard about how we, redefine consumer funnels and journeys. And we have to be brave enough to explore categories that might be a little uncomfortable because they sit outside of our core brand, but they're an opportunity to kind of spark a connection with a consumer in a way that is maybe not sports centric in our case. So example of that would be, gaming. Gaming has obviously been identified as an interesting opportunity or way to engage younger people who may first have started as, Madden gamers,
Mhm.
but that's an opportunity to then take that time and attention and develop that into what will hopefully be, a lifelong NFL fan that will engage and consume in all the ways that the NFL has to offer. For us, it's been looking at content and saying, what else is our audience passionate about besides football, or what other opportunities do we have to connect with them? If it's not football today, what else do they care about that might be a chance to develop, create and develop a relationship? So an example of that might be video series that focus, we have a category of content we refer to as helmets off. And those are really stories that focus on our players and our coaching staff off the field, a lot of times in their personal environments, exploring their personal passions, which create opportunities to connect with people who, maybe don't care about football today or don't know much about football. If you do care about what it's like to raise a toddler and you find it, really touching and amazing to see Brandon Graham and his wife and their little girl together, that's an opportunity. If you love to cook, then you should listen to our podcast, Feeding the Birds, where one of our executive chefs sits with a player or a coach, every single week to talk about, the food culture, not just within football, which is huge, by the way, but also, food as nostalgia and food they like to cook or grew up on. So, it's an exploration that has to go outside of your comfort zone in order to be successful.
Jen, your entire background, I'd say in the last 15 years is pretty interesting in the sense that you've been able to go into the TV world, go into the digital world, go into the content marketing world, and now moving into sports. You've got all this really great experience and all these different spokes, which I think for anyone's career is super cool, right? Because it's like
Thank
you're not
you.
doing the same thing over and over, but you're taking what you've learned and applying it to every new facet of a new job that you're doing. And along the way, we all make mistakes, right? Nobody's perfect. And I ask this to a lot of people that I'm doing these podcasts with because I think it's really important. But when you look back, in
Mm.
your, let's just say your entire career, is there a mistake that you might have made and that you learned from and something that you might want to share?
That's a really good question. I actually love that question because I think that examining failure is really, really important to just anyone's overall success. So I think, off the cuff, I would say it's somewhat general, but I did it more than once, and I'm guessing maybe some other people are guilty of it too. But I have definitely been guilty in the past of getting caught in shiny object syndrome. And
Okay.
by that, I mean feeling the need to create and push things out that maybe met the needs of the organization's perception, but never really got enough time to breathe or wasn't designed well enough to connect with the end consumer or the audience at the end of the day. So it's almost like, marketing in an echo chamber, right? You're doing it for the pat on the back and because it's something you think the organization will look at favorably. But if you really move the needle at the end of the day on connecting with an audience. And I've been, really, really self-critical over the last several years to ensure that I'm not doing that, and certainly that I wasn't advising clients in that direction. Because if the objective is to be innovative, there's plenty of other ways to do that also produce an outcome that connects with an individual and has the opportunity to generate revenue. So, yeah, shiny object syndrome, guilty.
Yeah, I think we're all guilty of that many times.
Yeah.
Great answer. So, talking about TV, right? There's so much change going on right now. So, you've got Netflix is continuing to grow. You've got people that are on YouTube 24/7 looking for things. People literally want content on demand, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, when I think about TV, I want to ask you, like, what is the future of TV? Will football be moved to more of an on demand model? Will streaming change and evolve? Like, what's next?
So my prediction is very much rooted in the past and what we've seen in, pretty recent cycles, which is, there was a very definitive time where a handful of broadcasters or entertainment platforms owned 100% of the shows that we watched and loved. And, very recently, and where we find ourselves today is in an environment that is more fragmented than it's ever been. In fact, it's starting to essentially reconsolidate. And so I think with that reconsolidation comes a couple of outcomes. One is a lot of the content that people believed would be the new sort of next gen content that people would want, but was not ultimately successful in getting those eyeballs or that attention will fall away. What that is, sort of remains to be seen. And we're going to get to, I think a very tight kind of cross cut of what it is that's been resonating. And we're going to be able to get it on fewer platforms. And then beyond that, I think that we start fragmenting again, quite honestly. I think those folks who are successful in, being one of the handful is too small, but one of the kind of primary players on the video side will start to get more aggressive with audio and probably building out, bigger ecosystems beyond just video as a means of kind of maintaining that level of retention, interest, and ability to entertain people like throughout their day. We think a lot about what does it mean to entertain an Eagles fan from the time they wake up in the morning until the time they go to bed. And that mix of content and that distribution timing and that accessibility really ranges from checking in with Alexa first thing in the morning to get your team update, to listening to a podcast on your commute, to engaging with us on social and watching the shows that we live stream on our site, to watching the game maybe in a very broadcast proper way, to then, joining us for recaps that are both, podcast driven as well as live streamed. And so, I think it's going to be a reconsolidation that then kind of grows into more mediums within those players' ecosystems.
Awesome. That was a really good look into the future.
Thanks.
We'll have to revisit that.
Yeah, absolutely. Hold me accountable. This might all be just a huge miscalculation. Like, man, was I wrong? I'm okay with that.
And then one other quick question, because this is something that I've been asking everybody. If you had to describe the color blue to a blind person, how would you do that?
I would describe the color blue as kind of the way that you feel when you inhale near the water, near the ocean on a really sort of brisk, kind of cool day. That feeling, the way that cold air kind of, just hits your chest, and the way it kind of feels just fresh and really crisp and clean. I think I would describe it that way.
I would describe it very similar.
Awesome.
Thank you for tuning in to Marketing Mix. We hope you enjoyed today's podcast. Be sure to share and subscribe. Until next time, take care.